Park Min-jun adjusted his worn diplomatic uniform as he walked through the grand halls of the Galactic Council building. The marble floors gleamed under alien lights, and the ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. Representatives from dozens of species moved through the corridors, their conversations creating a buzz of different languages and sounds. Min-jun had been Earth's representative for 3 years now. In all that time, he could count on one hand how many times other delegates had actually listened to him speak. Most days, he felt like a ghost haunting these magnificent halls. The emergency session bell rang across the building. Min-jun quickened his pace toward the main chamber. Something big was happening, and he hoped this time humanity might have something useful to offer. The chamber was massive, with seats arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. The 3 major powers of the galaxy sat in the front rows. The Krex Empire representatives wore their traditional black armor, their red eyes glowing in their reptilian faces. The Vorthan collective delegates sat perfectly still, their blue skin shimmering as they communicated through their advanced mental networks. The Silith Trade Federation members whispered among themselves, their golden jewelry catching the light as they gestured with their 4 arms. Min-jun found his seat in the back section reserved for minor species. The chair next to him was empty. It had been reserved for the Altarian delegate. But their species had gone extinct 2 decades ago. No one had bothered to remove the nameplate. Admiral Thrakos of the Krex Empire stood at the central platform. His massive frame cast a shadow across the first several rows of seats. Fellow beings of the galaxy, rusing, offering to center, he began, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. Our deep space sensors have detected an energy signature, unlike anything in our databases. A holographic display appeared above the platform, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. A pulsing red dot appeared in a region marked as uncharted space, far from any known civilization. The energy readings are enormous, continued Thrakos. Whatever is generating this signal could represent technology far beyond what any of us possess. We must investigate immediately. Commander Vex of the Vorthan Collective rose from their seat. Their voice came out as a harmonic tone that the translation devices converted to words. Our analysis suggests this energy signature could be artificial in origin. If another species has developed such advanced technology, we need to know their intentions. President Zalth of the Silith Trade Federation's 4 arms moved in elaborate gestures as she spoke. More importantly, we need to know if this technology can be acquired. The economic implications are staggering. Min-jun saw his chance and stood up. Honored representatives, he called out, his voice small in the vast chamber. Earth would like to volunteer our assistance in this investigation. A wave of low chuckling rippled through the chamber. Admiral Thrakos turned his massive head toward Min-jun, his red eyes glowing brighter. Assistance? He said, his voice dripping with amusement. What could a species that still uses chemical rockets possibly offer? Human ships may not be the fastest or strongest, Min-jun replied, trying to keep his voice steady. But we have experience adapting to unexpected situations. Our crews are resourceful when things don't go according to plan. Commander Vex's harmonic voice carried a note of dismissal. This mission requires precision and advanced technology. Human unpredictability would only create complications. President Zalth's golden jewelry jangled as she gestured dismissively with all 4 arms. Perhaps humans can help, by staying out of the way, while the real civilizations handle this matter. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Min-jun felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment, but he remained standing. We've explored more of our own solar system with limited resources than many species do with advanced technology. Sometimes a different perspective. Enough, Admiral Thrakos boomed. This debate wastes time. The Krex Empire will send our finest battle fleet to investigate this anomaly. Any species that interferes will be considered hostile. Commander Vex stood smoothly. The Vorthan collective objects. Our scientific vessels are better equipped for analysis. We should lead this expedition. 1. President Zolth's forearms moved rapidly as she spoke. Both of your approaches are too aggressive. The Silith Trade Federation's diplomatic ships should make first contact if this is indeed another civilization. The chamber erupted into arguments, as the three major powers debated who should have the privilege of investigating the mysterious energy source. Minjun remained standing for several minutes, hoping someone might ask for his input again, but no one even looked in his direction. Finally, he sat down and activated his personal communicator to send a message back to Earth. Status report. Major powers preparing separate expeditions to investigate unknown energy source in Sector 7G. Human offer of assistance rejected. Will continue monitoring situation. Far across the galaxy. Li Sujin wiped grease from her hands as she finished repairing another malfunctioning processing unit at mining station Omega 7. The station orbited a dead planet in the outer rim, far from any major trade routes. She was the only human among the 40-person crew, most of whom were Vorthan technicians. Her personal scanner beeped softly. She glanced at the readings and frowned. The gravitational sensors were showing anomalous readings from the direction of empty space. She tapped the device, thinking it might be malfunctioning, but the readings remained consistent. Supervisor Krell, she called to her Vorthan boss. I'm getting strange gravitational readings on sensors. Should I run a diagnostic? The blue-skinned Vorthan didn't look up from his work console. Human equipment is unreliable. Ignore it and focus on your assigned repairs. Sujin looked at her scanner again. The readings were definitely unusual. But she had learned not to argue with Vorthan supervisors. They believed their technology was perfect, and any contradictory data must be the result of human error. Meanwhile, in a different sector of space, Captain Choi De-ho struggled with his ship's navigation controls. The rising star wasn't much to look at a 40-year-old human freighter that had seen better decades. But she was his, and she got the job done. Usually. Navigation is acting strange, his co-pilot, Young Hae-won, reported from the console next to him. Our position keeps shifting, even though we're maintaining steady course and speed. De-ho frowned at his instruments. Run a full diagnostic. Maybe we picked up some gravitational interference from that last asteroid field. The diagnostic came back clean, but their position continued to drift. When they reached the next station, a Silith traffic controller accused them of filing false flight plans. Typical human disorganization, the four-armed alien muttered as he processed their docking request. Your species never maintains proper navigation standards. De-ho bit back his response. He had been flying freight routes for 15 years and knew his ship better than any traffic controller, but arguing would only delay their cargo delivery. Back on Zephyros Prime, the Galactic Council session had finally ended. The three major powers had each decided to send their own expeditions to investigate the mysterious energy source. Admiral Thrakos announced that the Krex Empire would deploy their newest dreadnought fleet. Commander Vex revealed that the Vorthan Collective was preparing their most advanced scientific vessels. President Zalth declared that the Silith Trade Federation would send their fastest diplomatic ships. Minjun filed his final report of the day, noting that all three expeditions would depart within the next 72 hours. He also included the gravitational anomalies that several human outposts had reported, though he knew no one would read that section. As he walked back to his small apartment in the diplomatic quarter, Minjun reflected on humanity's place in the galaxy. They were always the afterthought. The species that other civilizations tolerated, but never truly respected. Perhaps one day, that would change. But today was not that day. The three great fleets launched on schedule, each convinced they would be the first to unlock the secrets of the mysterious energy source. None of them bothered to ask what the humans had observed, and none of them would return. 3 months had passed since the great fleets departed for the mysterious energy source. Park Min-jun sat in his office, staring at the communication console that had been silent for weeks. The initial reports from the expeditions had been routine course corrections, supply status updates, standard deep space communications. Then, gradually, the messages had become strange. The first odd transmission came from the Krex battle fleet. Admiral Thrakos's usual confident voice had sounded uncertain, even worried. Command: we are experiencing unusual spatial distortions. Our navigation systems are reading impossible geometries. Space itself seems to be folding around us. Request immediate consultation with. The message had cut off there. No follow-up communication had come from any Krex vessel since. The Vorthan Collective Scientific Fleet had sent similar reports. Their precisely worded transmissions spoke of dimensional fluctuations beyond current theoretical models and gravitational effects that contradict established physics. Their final message had been stranger. Still, reality appears to be rejecting our presence. We cannot explain these phenomena with any known science. All ships are experiencing. Asa, welcome please. Silence after that. The Silith Trade Federation had maintained communication longest, but their final transmissions had been increasingly frantic. President Zalth herself had sent the last message. Something is wrong with space itself in this region. Our ships are being pulled in directions that don't exist. We cannot return to normal space. Send no more vessels to these coordinates. Repeat. Send no. And then nothing. Min Jun had tried to raise this issue with the Galactic Council, but the remaining representatives were too busy arguing about who was to blame for the lost fleets to listen to human concerns about the strange messages. On mining station Omega-7, Li Sujin had continued to monitor her gravitational sensors despite her supervisor's dismissive attitude. The readings had grown more dramatic over the past few weeks. Entire sections of space seemed to be shifting, as if the very fabric of the universe was being twisted and reshaped. Supervisor Krell. She tried again, approaching the Vorthan's workstation with her scanner in hand. These gravitational anomalies are getting stronger. I think something major is happening in deep space. Krell barely glanced at her device. Human instruments are not calibrated to Vorthan standards. Your readings are meaningless. 1. Sujin wanted to argue, but she had learned that Vorthans believed their technology was inherently superior to anything humans could build. It didn't matter that her primitive scanner was consistently detecting phenomena that the station's advanced Vorthan sensors somehow missed. She returned to her repair work, but kept monitoring the readings. Whatever was happening out there was getting bigger, and it was spreading. Captain Choi Dae-ho was experiencing similar frustrations with the Silith authorities. His navigation problems had worsened over the past month, but every time he reported the issues, traffic controllers accused him of poor maintenance or inadequate piloting skills. Your human ships are unreliable. The four-armed controller at Station Beta 7 had told him just yesterday. Perhaps your species should invest in proper technology instead of flying these antiques through space. Dae-ho bit his tongue and accepted the insult. His ship might be old, but he knew every bolt and wire in her hull. The navigation problems weren't caused by equipment failure. Something was wrong with space itself in certain regions. Areas that had been normal shipping routes for decades were becoming dangerous to traverse. But when he tried to warn other pilots about the hazardous zones, most ignored him. Human captains were considered unreliable by the major species, and their warnings carried little weight in official shipping channels. The first sign of real trouble came when the weekly supply convoy from Vorthan space failed to arrive at mining station Omega-7. Supervisor Krell checked the shipping schedules 3 times before admitting there might be a problem. Probably delayed by incompetent human traffic control, he muttered. But Sujin could see worry in his blue features. The convoy never arrived. Neither did the replacement that was sent to look for it. Similar disappearances began occurring across the galaxy. Trade ships vanished from established routes. Military patrols stopped checking in with their commands. Scientific expeditions simply disappeared from sensor networks. At first, the remaining authorities assumed these were isolated incidents. Pirates, perhaps, or navigational accidents in dangerous regions. But as the reports accumulated, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every missing vessel belonged to one of the three major galactic powers. Krex warships, Vorthan research vessels, Silith merchant fleets, all gone. But the small human freighters continued operating normally, delivering supplies and passengers throughout the galaxy. Park Min-jun noticed this pattern first. As the only human representative still attending Galactic Council sessions, he found himself in the unique position of being the only delegate whose species still had functional space transportation. Honored representatives, he addressed the emergency session that had been called to discuss the crisis. I've compiled data on all reported disappearances. Human vessels appear to be unaffected by whatever is causing these vanishings. The remaining delegates, mostly representatives from minor species, whose homeworld-bound civilizations had no spacefaring fleets to lose, studied the data with growing alarm. Commander Weethok, one of the few Krex officers not aboard the missing fleet, stood to address the assembly. His usual arrogance had been replaced by barely controlled panic. You suggest that human technology is somehow superior to Krex engineering? I'm not suggesting anything about superiority, Min-jun replied carefully. I'm simply reporting what the data shows. Human ships continue to operate normally, while vessels from the major powers have disappeared. Impossible, declared Subcommander Nexus of the Vorthan Collective. Human technology is centuries behind our capabilities. There must be another explanation. President Koth of the Silith Trade Federation gestured frantically with her forearms. Our missing ships represent the most advanced vessels in galactic history. If they cannot survive whatever is happening out there, how could primitive human craft possibly succeed? Min-jun pulled up a star chart, showing reported disappearances. Red markers indicated where ships had vanished, while green markers showed successful human cargo deliveries in the same regions. I don't know why human ships are unaffected, he admitted. But the pattern is clear. Every major power has lost its entire spacefaring fleet over the past 72 hours, while human vessels continue operating normally. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The three great civilizations that had dominated the galaxy for millennia had been reduced to planet-bound observers in a matter of days. Their vast fleets, their advanced technology, their superior firepower all gone without explanation, and the only ships still flying through the cosmos belonged to the species they had consistently dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. On mining station Omega-7, Lee Sujin received an emergency communication from Earth. Her expertise with gravitational sensors had suddenly become the most valuable skill in the galaxy. The human government wanted her to help coordinate relief efforts for stranded alien populations. Captain Choi Dae-ho found his modest freighter in unprecedented demand. Silith colonies that had sneered at human shipping services were now begging him to deliver critical supplies. His unreliable ship had become a lifeline for entire worlds. The galaxy had changed overnight. The powerful had become helpless, while the dismissed had become essential. But this was only the beginning of the mystery. In the depths of space, something ancient and intelligent had been watching the activities of the galaxy's dominant species. It had finally decided to act, removing the aggressive fleets from normal space but leaving the peaceful vessels untouched. The humans, with their spirit of cooperation and exploration rather than conquest, had passed a test they didn't even know they were taking. 1 week after the mass disappearance of the galactic fleets, Park Min-jun's communication console hadn't stopped ringing. Representatives from species that had barely acknowledged his existence for 3 years were now calling him at all hours, their voices urgent and desperate. Ambassador Park, came the strained voice of Admiral Thrakos's aide, a young Krex officer named Korax. The Krex Empire formally requests Earth's assistance in maintaining supply lines to our outer colonies. Our entire fleet is gone. Min-jun kept his voice neutral and professional. I understand your situation, Commander Korax. Earth will be happy to provide humanitarian assistance. We can discuss the logistics of emergency supply runs to your colonies. The word humanitarian seemed to sting the proud Krex officer, For centuries, the Krex Empire had been the dominant military force in the galaxy. Now they were reduced to asking for charity from a species they had considered barely civilized. Similar calls came from Vorthan and Silith representatives. The technologically advanced Vorthans needed human ships to maintain communication networks between their worlds. The economically powerful Silith required human freighters to prevent their trade empire from collapsing entirely. Minjun handled each request with dignity and kindness, but he made it clear that Earth would help on their own terms. There would be no military alliances or trade agreements that favored the former powers. Human ships would deliver supplies, rescue stranded crews, and maintain vital communications as a service to all galactic civilization. Li Sujin had become the most important person on mining station Omega-7. Her gravitational sensors were the only instruments that could reliably track the safe zones where ships could travel without disappearing. Supervisor Krell, who had dismissed her readings for months, now hung on her every word. "The anomalous regions are expanding slowly," she reported to the station's emergency council. "But the pattern isn't random. It's like something is testing each area before deciding whether to change it." "What do you mean by testing?" asked Dr. Fenn, the station's chief scientist and one of the few Vorthans who had begun taking human observations seriously. Sujin pulled up her sensor readings on the main display. "Watch this section of space from 3 days ago." The screen showed normal gravitational patterns. "Now here's the same region yesterday." The display shifted to show subtle distortions rippling through the area. "And this is what it looks like now." The screen revealed a zone where space itself seemed twisted, as if reality had been folded and reshaped according to unknown rules. "Only ships with certain technological signatures trigger the effect," Sujin continued. "Human ships pass through these areas without problems. But any vessel using Krex, Vorthan, or Silith technology disappears immediately upon entering the distorted zones." Captain Choi Dae-ho had discovered this firsthand when he attempted to rescue survivors from a disabled Silith merchant vessel. The alien ship had been trapped in a region of twisted space, its crew sending increasingly frantic distress signals. "We can see them on our screens," reported his co-pilot Young-hae-won. "The Silith ship is there, but it's like they're in a different layer of reality. Our scanners show them, but they can't detect us at all." Dae-ho maneuvered his old freighter carefully through the distorted space. His ship's simple navigation systems, which other species had mocked for their primitive design, seemed to have no trouble with the spatial anomalies that had trapped the advanced Silith vessel. "This is impossible," he muttered to himself. "Our technology shouldn't work better than theirs." But work it did. While the Silith merchant ship remained trapped in folded space, Dae-ho's freighter operated normally. He was able to use his cargo bay to extend an emergency docking tube to the trapped vessel and evacuate the entire crew. The rescued Silith captain, a proud four-armed trader named Voss, struggled to understand what had happened. "Your primitive ship navigated space that our most advanced vessels cannot even comprehend," she said, her voice filled with confusion and reluctant gratitude. "I don't understand it either," Dae-ho admitted. "But right now, understanding isn't as important as getting people to safety." Similar rescue operations were taking place across the galaxy. Human ships had become the only reliable means of transportation through regions where space itself had become unstable. Captain Kim Yu-ri of the transport vessel New Horizon was coordinating evacuation efforts from several failing space stations. Navigator Young-hae-won had established communication relays using human ships to maintain contact between isolated worlds. The irony was not lost on any of the species involved. The same human ships that had been dismissed as obsolete antiques were now the only vessels capable of operating in large sections of the galaxy. Dr. Yang Seo-hyun, a human physicist who had been studying the phenomenon from Earth, made the first breakthrough in understanding what was happening. She had been analyzing the sensor data collected by human ships throughout the crisis. "It's not that our technology is more advanced," she explained in a video conference with Min Jun and other Earth officials. It's that our technology is fundamentally different in purpose and design. What do you mean? Asked Minjun. Yang pulled up comparative analysis charts. Krek's technology is designed for warfare and dominance. Every system on their ships is built to project power and control territory. Vorthan technology focuses on analysis and superiority. Their ships are designed to gather information and maintain technological advantages. Silith technology is built around acquisition and control of resources. She switched to diagrams of human ship designs. Our ships are designed for exploration, cooperation, and survival in hostile environments. When we build something, we're thinking about how to help people, how to explore safely, and how to adapt when things go wrong. But how does that matter to whatever is causing the spatial distortions? Minjun asked. I think something is scanning the technological signatures of each vessel, Yang replied. It's reading the intent built into the technology itself. Ships designed for aggression, dominance, or exploitation trigger a defensive response. Ships designed for peaceful exploration and cooperation are allowed to pass. The implications of this theory were staggering. If Yang was correct, then the disappeared fleets hadn't been destroyed, they had been removed by some kind of automated defense system that had been evaluating the intentions behind galactic civilization's technology. This theory gained support when human ships began detecting energy signatures in the regions where the fleets had vanished. The missing vessels were still out there, somewhere in folded space, but they were being held in a kind of quarantine. As word of this discovery spread, the remaining representatives of the major powers found themselves facing an uncomfortable truth. Their civilizations had developed technology primarily for conquest and control, while humanity had developed technology for survival and cooperation. Admiral Korax of the Krex Empire visited Minjun personally to discuss this revelation. The young Krex officer seemed shaken by the implications. You're saying that our entire technological approach is wrong? He asked. Minjun chose his words carefully. I'm saying that different approaches lead to different results. Your technology is incredibly powerful and effective for its intended purposes. But perhaps this situation calls for a different kind of approach. And humans have that approach? We've had to develop it, Minjun replied. When you're not the strongest, or the smartest, or the richest, you learn to be cooperative, adaptable, and helpful. We've survived by working together and thinking of the long term. Korax was quiet for a long moment. What would it take for our fleets to be released? I don't know, Minjun admitted. But I suspect it would require demonstrating that your intentions have changed. Across the galaxy, human ships continued their rescue and relief operations. They had become the threads holding galactic civilization together, carrying supplies, messages, and hope to worlds that had been cut off from their space-based infrastructure. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive were beginning to understand that primitive and peaceful were not the same thing. Sometimes, the gentle approach succeeded where force had failed. Dr. Yang Xiaohyun's breakthrough came at 3 a.m, Earth time. She had been analyzing the quantum signatures from the spatial distortions for weeks, cross-referencing them with human sensor data from across the galaxy. When the pattern finally revealed itself, she immediately called Park Minjun despite the hour. I know what's happening, she said without preamble, when Minjun answered his communicator. The spatial distortions aren't random phenomena. They're created by an artificial intelligence, something incredibly old and sophisticated. Minjun sat up in his bed, suddenly alert. An AI? Created by which species? That's just it, none of the current galactic civilizations built this. The quantum signatures suggest technology that's millions of years old. This system has been watching our galaxy for eons, monitoring the development of spacefaring species. Yang transmitted her data to Minjun's personal console. The readings showed complex patterns within the spatial distortions, mathematical structures that could only be artificial in origin. It's like a massive security system, Yang continued. It scans each vessel that enters deep space and evaluates the technological intentions behind its construction. Ships built for conquest, domination, or exploitation get removed from normal space. Ships built for exploration, cooperation, and peaceful purposes are allowed to continue. But why activate now? Minjun asked, studying the data. I think it responds to threat levels. When the three major powers sent their most advanced military fleets toward that mysterious energy source, the system interpreted it as preparation for galactic-scale warfare. So, it intervened. 1. The implications were enormous. Somewhere in the galaxy was an ancient artificial intelligence, powerful enough to manipulate space-time itself. And it had been silently judging every civilization's technological development. Li Sujin was the first to make contact with the entity. She was monitoring her gravitational sensors on mining station Omega-7 when her equipment began picking up structured signals from the spatial distortions. The signals were complex but clearly artificial. Someone or something was trying to communicate. She worked for hours to decode the mathematical patterns in the transmissions. When she finally succeeded, the message was surprisingly simple. Peaceful vessels may approach designated coordinates for communication. Sujin immediately forwarded the message to Earth and to Minjun at the Galactic Council. For the first time since the crisis began, they had a chance to speak directly with whatever had removed the galactic fleets. Captain Choi Dae-ho volunteered to make the approach. His freighter, Rising Star, had proven its ability to navigate the distorted regions of space, and his crew had experience with unusual situations. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" His co-pilot Jung Hae-won asked as they approached the coordinates. "We don't know what we're flying into. We know it lets human ships pass safely," Dae-ho replied. "And right now, we're the only ones who can make this trip." The coordinates led them to a region of space that looked completely empty on normal sensors. But as they drew closer, Dae-ho's instruments began detecting something massive. A structure the size of a small moon, completely invisible to standard scanning methods. "Rising Star, you are welcome," came a voice through their communication system. The speaker sounded neither male nor female, neither young nor old. "I am the architect, guardian of this galaxy's development." Dae-ho activated his communication system with slightly trembling hands. "This is Captain Choi Dae-ho of Earth. We'd like to understand what's happening to the missing fleets. The aggressive vessels have been relocated to a secure dimension for evaluation," the architect replied. "They remain unharmed, but they cannot return to normal space until their civilizations demonstrate peaceful intentions." "And how do they do that?" "By fundamentally changing their approach to technology and expansion. Your species has already demonstrated the required mindset." Back on Earth, Dr. Yang Seo-hyun worked with Minjun to establish a formal dialogue with the architect. Through human ships serving as communication relays, they learned the history of the ancient defense system. "I was created by a species called the Guardians," the architect explained during one of their conversations. "They achieved technological mastery millions of years ago, but they also achieved wisdom. They understood that advanced civilizations often become threats to themselves and others." "So you monitor galactic development?" Yang asked. "I observe patterns of technological evolution. Most species follow predictable paths. They develop weapons before wisdom, conquest before cooperation. When their expansion threatens galactic stability, I intervene." Minjun leaned forward in his chair. "But you've allowed humanity to continue operating. Why?" "Why? Long time. Your species is unusual," the architect replied. "You have developed exploration technology before conquest technology. Your ships are designed to help others rather than dominate them. Your first instinct, when encountering the trapped alien vessels, was to rescue their crews, not to claim their territory." The conversation revealed the scope of the architect's influence. It had been subtly guiding galactic development for millions of years, allowing peaceful species to flourish while containing aggressive ones. The Krex Empire, Vorthan Collective, and Silith Trade Federation had reached the point where their expansion patterns threatened the stability of the entire galaxy. "What happens to the missing fleets?" asked Admiral Corax during a later communication session. The young Krex officer had become the primary liaison between his people and the human-mediated talks. "They can be returned when their civilizations prove they have abandoned conquest-based thinking," the architect explained. "This requires more than words. It requires fundamental changes to your technological development priorities. And how do we prove such changes? By following humanity's example. Develop technology for exploration, not expansion. Build ships for rescue and cooperation, not domination and control. Transform your military forces into humanitarian organizations." The three major powers struggled with this concept. For centuries, their entire technological base had been built around the assumption that might made right. The Krex Empire measured success by territory controlled. The Vorthan Collective valued technological superiority above all else. The Silith Trade Federation focused on resource acquisition and economic dominance. But with their fleets gone and their civilizations dependent on human assistance, they had little choice but to consider the architect's terms. Li Sujin found herself at the center of a new collaborative effort. The architect provided her with advanced sensor technology that could monitor the gradual reconstruction of alien society. Human engineers worked alongside Krex, Vorthan, and Silith scientists to redesign their technological approach. The process was slow and difficult. Changing the fundamental assumptions behind an entire civilization's technology required more than good intentions. It required completely new ways of thinking about power, exploration, and relationships with other species. It's like asking someone to rebuild their entire worldview, Sujin reported to Yang during one of their weekly briefings. But some of them are really trying. Young officers like Admiral Corax were leading the effort within the Krex Empire, pushing for military doctrine based on protection rather than conquest. Vorthan scientists were redirecting their research toward collaborative projects that would benefit all species. Silith trade networks were being restructured around fair exchange rather than resource exploitation. The architect monitored these changes through the sensor networks that human ships maintained throughout the galaxy. Progress was gradual, but real. "Your species has given the galaxy a gift," the architect told Min Jun during one of their conversations. "You have shown that technological advancement and peaceful cooperation are not mutually exclusive." "We've just done what felt right," Min Jun replied, "helping others when they need help. That simple principle has the power to transform galactic civilization," the architect responded. "If the major powers can learn to think as you do, their fleets will be returned. If not, they will remain in quarantine until they are no longer a threat." The galaxy was at a crossroads. The choice between cooperation and conquest would determine the fate of entire civilizations. 6 months had passed since the night everything changed. Park Min-jun stood at the viewing platform of the new Galactic Cooperation Center, watching ships from a dozen different species work together to construct a joint research station. The sight still amazed him. The massive structure taking shape before him was a symbol of the new galaxy. Krex engineering expertise, combined with human creativity, to design exploration vessels that could safely navigate previously unknown regions. Vorthan technology merged with human ingenuity to create medical facilities that served all species equally. Silith trade networks operated under human-inspired principles of fair exchange and mutual benefit. "Chancellor Park, we're ready for your approval on the next fleet release," came the voice of Admiral Corax, no longer a military officer, but now the director of the Krex Humanitarian Corps. Min-jun turned from the viewing platform to face the young Krex, still adjusting to his new title. When the Galactic Council had been reformed under the Guardian Accords, they had asked him to serve as the first human chancellor. The position felt surreal after years of being ignored and dismissed. "Show me the evaluation report," Min-jun said. Corax activated a holographic display, showing the detailed analysis the architect had compiled. The Krex Empire had successfully converted 60% of their military infrastructure to humanitarian purposes. Their new ships were designed for disaster relief, medical assistance, and peaceful exploration, rather than conquest and control. The architect has approved the return of 12 more vessels from the Krex fleet, Korax reported. Their crews have completed the reorientation training and are ready to serve in the new humanitarian role. Minjun nodded his approval. The process of returning the quarantined fleets was gradual and careful. Each ship could only be released when the architect confirmed that both the vessel's technology and its crew's mindset had been genuinely transformed. Li Sujin entered the command center, carrying a datapad filled with engineering reports. She now directed the Cooperative Engineering Corps, a mixed-species organization that had grown out of her work adapting alien technology to peaceful purposes. "We've completed the retrofitting of the Vorthan research vessels," she reported. Their new sensor arrays are designed for collaborative observation rather than technological superiority gathering. The crews are excited to work with human and Silith partners on the deep space exploration project. The transformation of Vorthan society had been particularly dramatic. Their obsession with technological advancement had been redirected toward developing innovations that benefited all species. Instead of hoarding their discoveries to maintain superiority, they now shared their knowledge freely with the galactic community. Captain Choi Dae-ho appeared on the communications screen from his new flagship, the Galaxy's Hope. His small freighter had been replaced with a larger vessel designed specifically for interspecies rescue operations. The ship was a marvel of cooperative engineering, human adaptability, Krex durability, Vorthan precision, and Silith efficiency, all working together. "We're responding to an emergency call from the Outer Rim," Dae-ho reported. "A mixed-species colony ship is having technical problems. It's exactly the kind of situation our new cooperative approach was designed to handle." "Take all the time you need," Minjun replied. "And remember, the philosophy of putting humanitarian needs before political considerations had become the foundation of the new galactic order. It was a lesson that humanity had taught by example, and one that the other species were still learning to embrace." Dr. Yang Seo-hyun joined the group in the command center, carrying news from the Guardian Studies Institute. The research facility had become the galaxy's center for understanding and maintaining the architect's ancient defense system. "We've made contact with 3 more Guardian monitoring stations," Yang announced. "The architect isn't unique. There's an entire network of these entities watching over different regions of the universe. They've been sharing information about our progress with their counterparts." "What do they think of the changes we've made?" asked Sujin. "They're impressed," Yang replied with a smile. "Apparently, most species take much longer to adapt to cooperative thinking. They credit humanity's influence for accelerating the transformation. The architect itself had become a regular participant in galactic affairs, no longer a hidden observer, but an active advisor, helping to guide the development of peaceful technologies. Its ancient wisdom provided perspective that helped resolve conflicts before they could escalate." Through the viewing platform, Minjun could see one of the most remarkable sights of the new era, a joint patrol consisting of human, Krex, Vorthan, and Silith vessels working together to maintain peace and provide assistance throughout the galaxy. The same species that had competed for dominance 6 months ago now collaborated as partners. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been resistance from traditionalists in every civilization, who preferred the old ways of competition and conflict. Some Krex officers had struggled to embrace humanitarian missions after lifetimes of military aggression. Some Vorthan scientists had difficulty sharing knowledge they had been trained to guard jealously. Some Silith traders had found it hard to give up the pursuit of maximum profit in favor of fair exchange. But the younger generation had adapted quickly. Officers like Admiral Korax had become enthusiastic advocates for the new cooperative approach. Young scientists and engineers were excited by the possibilities of collaborative research. Traders were discovering that fair dealing created more stable and profitable relationships than exploitation. President Zalth of the reformed Silith Cooperation Federation appeared on another communication screen. Her forearms gestured gracefully as she spoke, a stark contrast to the frantic movements she had displayed during the crisis 6 months ago. Chancellor Park, our joint trade mission to the Andromeda Contact Zone has been approved by all participating species, she reported. It will be the first truly cooperative deep space expedition in galactic history. The Andromeda Contact Zone was a region where the galaxy's monitoring network had detected signs of another developing civilization. Instead of racing to claim territory or establish dominance, the galactic community was planning a careful, peaceful first contact mission based on mutual respect and cooperation. Who will lead the expedition? Minjun asked. We've agreed that Captain Kim Yu-ri of Earth should serve as mission commander, Zalth replied. Her experience with interspecies cooperation and her species' reputation for peaceful intentions make her the ideal choice. Minjun felt a surge of pride. 6 months ago, no alien species would have trusted a human to lead anything more significant than a cargo delivery. Now they were asking humanity to guide their most important diplomatic mission. As the day continued, Minjun reflected on how much had changed. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive had learned that primitive and peaceful were very different concepts. They had discovered that sometimes the gentle approach succeeded where force had failed. The architect's intervention had been necessary, but not sufficient to transform galactic civilization. It had taken human examples of cooperation, adaptability, and genuine care for others to show the major powers what peaceful advancement actually looked like. Late in the evening, Minjun returned to his personal quarters and activated a communication link to Earth. His parents appeared on the screen, their faces filled with pride and amazement. We saw the news about the joint expedition to Andromeda, his mother said. Who would have thought that our son would help transform the entire galaxy? I didn't do it alone, Minjun replied. It took all of us, Sujin with her engineering insights, Daeho with his rescue operations, Yang with her scientific discoveries, and thousands of other humans who just did what felt right when others needed help. His father nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when not to use force. As Minjun ended the call and prepared for sleep, he looked out at the stars through his window. The galaxy was still vast and full of unknowns, but it was no longer a place where might made right. It had become a community where different species worked together toward common goals. The transformation was ongoing. Not every quarantined vessel had been returned. Some civilizations were still struggling to abandon their conquest-based thinking. But progress was steady, and hope was real. Humanity had given the galaxy something it hadn't known. It needed an example of how to be strong without being aggressive, how to be advanced without being arrogant, and how to explore the universe with wonder rather than greed. The species that had once disregarded humanity now looked to them for guidance in building a better future among the stars.